Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we will be talking about the top strategies that are absolutely important to follow in order to earn your dream score in your next TOEFL exam in just 60 days. So make sure you follow along and grab yourself a paper or a pen or your laptop or iPad or whatever it is and start taking notes, and make sure you listen to it very carefully. Also, if you want to join the TOEFL Masterclass, the link will be at the description box down below. Now let's go ahead and hop onto the video. Coming to the next section. Now, the most important thing in TOEFL is note taking, and I talk about this a lot in the YouTube videos as well, and I'm going to talk over here as well because it's so important. If you do not know how to take notes properly in the TOEFL exam, you won't be able to pass the TOEFL exam at all, or you won't be able to achieve the dream score. And I've seen many students fail because they don't follow the right strategies. They end up writing everything, which is the most common pitfalls that the student end up getting into. They start writing everything down in fear of missing anything down, and at the end of the day they just run out of time, or they write so much information they get confused and do not know how to answer properly. The second would be knowing how to take notes, knowing what information is important, and knowing what information we can completely ignore. And we're going to talk about it more in detail in the next slide. There are just two strategies that we need to be following in order to take notes properly, whether it be the writing section, whether it be the listening section, whether it be the speaking section. We already covered the reading section right now, and we're going to move ahead to all these three sections. But first, note taking. There are two strategies that we need to be following. Number one, trimming the fat. Number two, using short forms. And now what I mean by trimming the fat. Now, as I say, we need to be writing the important information down, and we need to be minimizing the information, or we need to be ignoring the information that is not important for us, or is not going to help us answer the question. But how do we know what information is important and what information is not important? We're going to talk about it in the later example, but hear me out right now. It's so important to not write everything, because what happens is, in academic English, the kind of lectures that you hear in the TOEFL exam, the kind of conversations that you hear in the TOEFL exam are something like the professor comes in the class and starts talking like, hey class, what did you have in breakfast today? Oh, I had an avocado toast with some boiled eggs. Oh, let's get to the topic. Today we're going to talk about climate change. Now, a usual student, or 90% of the student would go ahead and start writing. What did the professor had in his breakfast today? He had avocado toast and boiled eggs. And he asked the students what they had in their breakfast. Let's go to the topic. Today we are going to, and then by the time they reach writing, today we are going to, they forgot what the professor was saying, and the professor is far ahead in the lecture. That is what usually happens to us. And this is the reason we end up failing the listening section, or we end up flunking the speaking or the writing section. So the professor is talking about his day. He's telling you what he ate in his breakfast. He's not going to ask you questions about it. This is known as a transition. And there are a lot of transition that we teach our students in our TOEFL Masterclass. But to give you a high-level idea of it, this would be the perfect example. He's not going to ask you questions about what he ate in his breakfast. He's not going to ask you questions about what you ate in your breakfast, so you don't have to write notes on it. Your notes should start from, let's get to the topic. You don't even have to write, let's get to the topic. Just write climate change, if that's the topic that the professor is talking about. This is a very minimal description of trimming the fat. And then using short forms. So you remember back in the days, there was a time when we started messaging people by cutting words. So ND was and, WT was what, and what do these Gen Zs do? They write, I don't know, is IDK. That's the reason, that's the way I want you to be taking notes on TOEFL. So we need to get very comfortable with this style of writing. Feel like you were back in the late 2000s, and you're writing a message to your friend, and you're using the shortest amount of words or the shortest amount of letter available to make a single word. And I'll give you an example in a bit. So this is an example of conversation that you might be able to hear in TOEFL, but this is a very relatively easy one. Let's go ahead and read it fast, okay? So the professor came and he was like, "Good morning, Sarah. Today we're discussing the role of biodiversity in ecosystem stability." Sarah says, "Sounds interesting. What exactly is biodiversity?" Professor, biodiversity refers to the variety of life in an ecosystem, species, genetic, and ecosystem diversity. Today, we'll focus on species diversity, and it's important. Sarah says, "So, more species make an ecosystem more stable?" Professor, exactly. Different species perform different role like pollination or pest control, which helps the ecosystem recover from disturbances like natural disasters. Sarah says, "Can you give an example?" Professor, sure. In Yellowstone, when wolves were removed, deer populations grew uncontrollably, damaging plants and affecting the whole ecosystem. When wolves were reintroduced, the balance was restored. Sarah says, so higher biodiversity makes ecosystem more resilient? Professor says, yes, ecosystems with more species are better at handling changes. Conservation efforts like protecting habitats and sustainable practices are key. Sarah says, thanks, Professor. This helps a lot. Professor says, you're welcome, Sarah. Good luck with your research. Now, take a minute to read this conversation yourself, and then I'm going to show you how you're going to be taking notes. Your time starts now. I'll give you like 1 minute. Okay, we're going to move ahead now. Now, this would be the kind of notes that we're talking about in TOEFL. Biodiversity in ecosystem? Question mark. The professor answers, it's variety of life in ecosystem. Species divided and important. More species make ecosystem more stable? The student asks. And then a question mark. Yes, different species have different roles, and pollination, pest control help ecosystem recover from disturbances like natural disaster. Then the student asks for an example. See how if used EX and question mark for asking for example. In Yellowstone, wolves are removed, deer grow more, damage the plant, affect ecosystem. When wolves reintroduce, balance restored, high biodiversity makes ecosystem more resilient. Ecosystem with more species, better handle changes, conservation effort, practicing habitat, and suspicious practices are key. Now, a layman reading this question or reading this entire notes would be able to understand it, but they don't have to. TOEFL test takers are not going to read your notes. If you are able to understand your notes, if you know what you wrote, because it's hard to remember for short-term memory, nothing else matters. And that is the key. Okay? So I took this notes and I know what I've written, but you might be writing a different way. Use your own short words. Use your own arrows. Use your own punctuation, whatever it is. Just make it work in that time. And this is the way I teach my students in my TOEFL Masterclass and elsewhere to start taking notes and get into the habit of this. And I promise, if you do this on a regular basis and you practice, you will get there. Now coming to the speaking part, and I think I had like two folks who were having problem in speaking, and speaking is hard. I get it. Even after doing it for so many years, I still get the anxiety. I still get the nerves when I am there recording myself. So I know it's hard, and it requires a lot of time and practice to get to the point where you're comfortable speaking another language, because we come from countries where English is not our native language, and it's completely okay. We do not think in English. We think in our mother language in our mother tongue, and then we speak in English. So there are two different things, and it takes time to get there. I totally get it. Even at the time when I'll tell you a short story. So I was recording the videos for my TOEFL Masterclass, in which I am teaching myself and I'm recording myself based on the timer in the speaking section, and I had to redo it so many times, just to get to the point where I am comfortable speaking. I have been doing this since like 2020 now, and it's been so many years, but I still get the nerves. So it is just to make you feel comfortable that it's completely okay to feel nervous. It's completely okay to get those nerves. It's completely fine to feel like that, because someone who's doing it for so many years is feeling it as well. It's nothing new. And if you practice, you will get there. They are just there to test how confident you are. So make sure you do not make the mistakes of doing or so. What happens is, when we think in middle of speaking, we subconsciously take breaks, right? So if I were to tell you a story that I haven't made in my mind already, I would take breaks naturally. And it's not because I want to take breaks, but that's because how the human brain works. And you do not want to be taking breaks when you're there in the speaking section of the TOEFL exam, because it is natural, but it on the actual exam, it is counted towards you, and it ends up hurting your score. So avoid any stuttering, avoid any stammering, avoid any pauses, any unusual pauses like I was going to say that my name is Afsha. This, although my English is right, my grammar is right, but because I took two breaks in between and I did in between, this will be counted against me. And it would end up making my score low. And that's definitely not where you want to go, right? So avoid stammering, avoid stuttering, avoid taking pauses. And how this is going to come naturally is going to come by practice, and is going to come by following the right strategies. And that is what I'm teaching you here. But one thing that I like to teach my students, and I'm not a fan of teaching prompts or giving you guys templates other than the writing section. I do not like to follow templates myself, because I think they make you confused, and against the clock ticking, is just hard to remember those, and you end up messing up everything. Okay, so there's just a general approach to follow in speaking. Yes, we do teach templates in the writing section, but that's an entirely different story. For speaking, make sure you use real world examples. And why I say this, because it's easier to make or explain a real world experience or a real world example than to make up an entirely new example in those 15 seconds in your head, and then explain the example with proper English, with proper grammar, without stuttering, without stammering, without taking breaks in the next 45 seconds. Okay, and I'll explain what I'm talking about right now. But active listening, listen actively to the prompt of conversation and take concise notes the way I teach you right here. Trim the fat and write everything in short. Then organize your response, and then speak with confidence and clarity. Always take a deep breath. Always take a deep breath before speaking. You can do it, and then start talking. Now, before I hop onto the writing section, let me go ahead and explain the two type of questions that are presented in the speaking section. There's usually independent speaking, and there is dependent speaking. In independent speaking, they usually ask your opinion about a certain topic. Today's kids are more interested in charity, or they're more materialistic. What is your opinion? Give examples and support your opinion. Something like that, right? Now your answer is going to be, and I hope you guys are taking notes, your answer is going to be something like you agree or disagree, then opinion 1 or reason 1, reason 2, conclusion. Now, conclusion is always going to be, and these are the two reasons I think they're interested in more in charity, or they're more materialistic. But reason 1 should have an example attached to it. Reason 2 should have an example attached to it. And why we do this? Because this is academic English, and we need every example that we give them, or every reason that we give them, to be followed by an example to support that reason. And it sounds hard, but it really isn't. When you if you watch other of my YouTube videos, I have explained that they're in more detail, and there is more and more detail available in the TOEFL Masterclass, in which I'm explaining how exactly to back your reason with a suitable example from your real life. So it's not going to be hard for you. But make sure you follow this approach in independent speaking. Agree, disagree. Either you agree with the statement that they have presented, or you disagree with the statement that they have presented. You give reason number one that is backed by an example. You give reason number two that is backed by another example. And then you give the conclusion. And conclusion is usually, these are the two reasons I think this, blah, blah, blah. That's it. And conclusion is ideal, by the way. If you're running out of time while speaking, you can skip the conclusion part. But do not skip reason one and reason two, because that is what makes your answer, legit. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. Now coming to the writing structure. Now writing is the only section, and I think there were two folks or one folk that was facing difficulty in writing. Writing is the only part of this exam that I prefer using the templates in, because you have time in writing, honestly, and it's so important to write the essay the way they want to see the essay in order to score high. And the time given in the writing section, honestly, I think is enough to follow the templates. I think it's 20 or so minutes, and an essay of somewhere around 200 to 220 words is a good essay that earns you a score of 29 to 30. So that's a good one. So you need to understand the prompt, carefully read the instructions, and identify the key elements of the task. You need to develop a strong outline, and I have taught in my TOEFL Masterclass how to develop a strong outline. I have taught in the TOEFL Masterclass how to make up or come up with ideas in the writing section, how to brainstorm the ideas, how to not run out of time before you can get to the ideas, and then again support your arguments. So it's going to be the same way. We are going to write a first paragraph that is going to be the introductory paragraph, and we're going to explain our opinion about whatever topic they're talking on, and then we will write the next next two paragraphs, particularly explaining the idea that we're giving in the first paragraph. That is how academic English works. And if you look at the bigger picture, writing is exactly like speaking, but you're just elaborating things more. You're giving your opinion in the first paragraph, like you did in speaking, the first line, agree or disagree. Then you give reason number one in the second paragraph of the writing essay. And then you support whatever reason you're giving with a real world example. Then you write reason number two, which would be the third paragraph in your writing essay, and you would again support it with an example, a real world example, and the fourth paragraph will be the conclusion paragraph. And I've taught everything. There is templates and everything is there in the TOEFL Masterclass for you guys to follow. So you all can go over there. There are free videos on YouTube as well that you guys can see and follow the prompts, and you should be good to go. But this was all in all a very high level description of how to go about the TOEFL exam. But please make sure, whether you go with me, whether you get enrolled in the TOEFL Masterclass, or you go with any other creator, or you're doing it by yourself, practice. Take out time, make a timetable. In 60 days, get to practice whatever area you're facing difficulty in. If it's reading, go to reading first. Stop following all other techniques and stick to just one creator. Because if you go on YouTube and you find reading strategies for TOEFL, you find a ton of them. Everyone is teaching different things. And there are different things that work for different people. It might be my strategies that work nice for you. It might be some other strategies that work nice for you. So whoever strategies it is, make sure you stick with them and then just follow those strategies. Do not go ahead and try to search reading strategies or writing strategies and try to look at every creator, what they're doing, what they're teaching, and try to, comprehend everything into your routine. You will end up going nowhere. So just practice, practice, practice whatever section you're feeling most difficulty in, and stick to a timetable. Develop effective strategies, whatever creator you feel like going. If it's me, well and good. If it's not me, that's okay as well. Whatever works for you. It's about you, it's not about me. Build confidence and resilience. And remember, on TOEFL, if you're not confident, if you let them sniff that you guys are feeling it or getting the nerves or not feeling confident about speaking in English or maybe writing in English, you will flunk. And one pro tip about the listening section over here would be, when you're there in the actual TOEFL exam and you're given those headphones and they start talking in your ears and you come to the listening section, there might be other people in the room who are going through their speaking section, might be, or they're taking breaks or whatnot, or the invigilator might be roaming around, stuff like that. There's stuff going on in the background and you might be able to hear other students from those headphones. Do not pay attention to those. This happened to me myself. I was there sitting in the listening. I took TOEFL multiple times. I scored high the first time, but I took it again and again and again just to stay in the habit, because I am here in the teaching business and I'm teaching people. I took the at-home edition multiple times as well, just to stay in the habit. And then I have been there with my students. My students have been through the same. So I know this happens a lot of times, and this happened to me too. For the very first time when I went in TOEFL, I was on the second question of my listening section, and I knew everything. I knew English, I knew how to talk, I knew the strategies and whatnot, but I got distracted. There was this student who was in her speaking section, and I could hear her behind my earphones, and I don't know for what reason, but I started paying attention to her more, and I didn't pay enough attention to the passage or the conversation, I think it was, that was being played in my ears. And you know what? I ended up leaving the entire passage because I just couldn't hear it. I couldn't answer the questions. I had to guess the question right because I got distracted. And this is one thing that I teach my students a lot. Please, 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 when you're there in the listening section, pay attention to what is being played in your ears. Turn deaf to everything that's going behind you. It's not important. You will end up wasting money, you will end up wasting time, and you will end up regretting, despite of knowing everything and how to do it. So these were the important things that we teach our students in order to succeed in all these 4 sections. You're more than welcome to do it yourself, or we have our TOEFL Masterclass that is literally the one-stop guide to everything on TOEFL. There is everything that you need to be getting in it. There is note-taking that you can practice with me. There's targeted sections help. So like I explained right now, there is even more targeted help available for each section, and I'm doing real-world example practice tests with screen recordings myself, so that you can follow easy to carry strategies from me and then copy everything into the practice tests that are there in the TOEFL Masterclass. They're real world examples, they're weekly updates because we're updating the content regularly in order to give you guys more and more content. It's personalized guidance available. So you can discuss any areas of weakness that you all might have with me 24/7. You can email me and you will be getting a reply in the next 24 hours. We do we do monthly live calls, so you can get on a call with me anytime you want and whatever you want to discuss in terms of TOEFL studying. So if there's a specific topic that you need help on, I will be more than happy to join you on a Zoom call, and then we can get the ball going. There are easy step-by-step strategies for every section: reading, listening, speaking, writing. There is writing templates available. There is also listening prompts available in that. There are a ton of practice exercises there for you to follow. There's cheat sheet, templates to score 30 on 30. And these are, by the way, evidence-based because all of my students have followed it. And alhamdulillah, all of them have scored their required marks or their dream marks. Most of my students have been pharmacists, but if you are somebody else, you are more than welcome to join as well. The entire value for this masterclass is worth around $6,000. That's a premium product, but for the people who attended this webinar today, and is not going to be valid for the people who might be listening to this webinar later on, the recorded version. The regular price is $6.99, but we are giving the masterclass away for